Tim, we're winding down to the end, but there still is a drivers' championship to worry about, and there's Vegas to worry about. And in fact, you shouldn't be worrying. You're in Vegas, and Tim, that's where you're from, or that's where you're coming to us from today. I want to start with the stat that you just read to me off the air about where we stand going into this weekend, because this sets up the entire thing. What happens? Max could win it this weekend. What would need to happen?
Okay, Max can win the championship this weekend if he finishes in front of Lando or Lando fails to score points. So there we go. That's how, close this one's going to be. Who knows if Red Bull's even going to be competitive here, Adam? I'm not sure. There were points last year at this race where Red Bull thought that they weren't going to be competitive. Then they showed up and they were competitive. And then Ferrari was also super competitive as well, which I kind of see the same narrative for this weekend as well. I think we're going to see probably Ferrari most likely out front. Then you're probably going to have that battle between the McLarens and the Red Bulls. And I think that's where it's all going to sort of fit in, really. But yeah, geez, could I see Max win the championship here? Yes, I could. I think he just wants to get this thing put away, right? Like just get it over with and put this one away. And I can see him doing that just simply because of the race that he's coming off of from Brazil. Brilliant. And he's going to want to piggyback off of that performance because he was fantastic. Obviously we spoke about it ad nauseum on our review pod of the Brazil Grand Prix, Adam, but yeah, I can see Max winning the championship here this weekend for sure.
I think it's where, however this goes, it's nice that we're this deep into a season with a drivers' championship still available. The constructors is still up for grabs too. Let's not forget, it's not that much of a gap. I want to talk about Vegas though. Last year, leading up to it, there were complaints about tickets. There were complaints about the effect of the neighborhood. And, I think they asked Lewis Hamilton and he's like, well, like, we don't want to like come in and disrupt people's lives and whatever. And, very Lewis Hamilton trying to be gracious. And then there was a manhole cover that popped off in practice because they're driving on actual streets. All the conversations, Tim, were about, oh, this isn't going to work. This is bad. They tried this in Vegas 40 years ago. It's not going to work this time. There's a lot of empty stands. People aren't coming and they're not spending the money. So the reality on the ground, though, is actually extremely different. There's an article in The Athletic about it today. And that's, your experience too backs this up. Vegas, it has been, for everybody that attends, a surprise in how great it's done.
I would say the locals probably don't like it as much, and they probably still don't like it as much as even with the amount that it brought into the city last year, and there's reports on that if folks want to dig a little deeper on it, you can. Vegas has put out the financial reports from that, comparing it to like the Super Bowl and how well the Super Bowl did there, and where F1 sort of stacked up, and F1 was number one, and they were the ones who brought a lot of the money in and during a slow week in Vegas, right? Because this is kind of when Las Vegas has their, I guess, like their downtime in terms of tourism, travel, folks coming in, spending money, seeing shows, etc., buying food, all that stuff. And so this is the week now where, with F1 taking over it's kind of like, yes, it definitely gets in some of the locals' way for sure. I can see that, no question about it. But what does it do for the economy? The numbers say it does quite a bit for the economy here. Again, I'm not a local, I don't live here, so I can't really comment on how all of that would affect me as a worker. But it's a great race. It's a ton of fun. They do a great job here. Like, they put on a great show. They really do, Adam. Like, there's something for everybody. There's always something happening, always. And it just feels like you're missing out on something at some point because there's so much activation going on around the city. And, you can't get everywhere, right? You just can't. And so you kind of got to pick and choose, where you want to go. And that's how much entertainment spectacle is built into this race. I'm really excited to take the track tour later tonight. And we're taping this on a Wednesday. This is media day, and we have interviews lined up later tonight. But then we get a little bit of track access, and just kind of seeing like what they're doing, because they've built stages for DJs, like popular DJs, not just like random DJs like DJ Tiesto and like a whole Martin Garrix. There's a whole bunch of like activations like that going on like around the racetrack, and that's really cool. Like I don't really know any other races that really plan it that deeply. And just the thought that's gone into the hospitality areas, because so you have the grandstands that are here, but you also have your hospitality areas for your paddock members who have, you know, spent big money to be in these hospitality suites, and they really are suites. They're like 3 stories, and you go inside one of them, and they're beautiful. Like just inside, like they're incredible. And to get an opportunity to watch a race from there has to be a thrilling experience, because they're amazing. It just really is. And so I think like on the grand scheme of things, when we look at this race as a spectacle, it really does have something for everyone. Now for ticket sales this year, I don't know how they've done. I really don't. I don't know if they've sold out. I'll find out later. And I don't know about prices either. I've heard that the prices have come down quite a bit on tickets. Now, have they been reduced recently? I couldn't tell you. I don't get that information like firsthand. So that is going to have to come later as well. I enjoyed the race here last year. Yes, the practice day was a nuisance for sure. No question about it. The qualifying was fun. It was awesome. And then the race was really good. It was very exciting. And now we've got, I believe, an extra DRS zone added as well. I mean, it should really, you know, kick things up even more, which is great. But yeah, Adam, I mean, it's definitely an event that is worth, like, is very much worth coming to. I mean, they all are. I mean, every Formula One race around the world, they all do things differently, right? And everyone has their own way of putting their stamp on Formula One coming to their city, their country, etc. But for Vegas, I mean, since it's like bright lights and a big show, you know, that's what they do, and they really lean into it, and it's extremely entertaining.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny. Max was kind of, you know, he's very Max about the introductions of the drivers when they came up through the stage last year, and
I get that, dude. I get that.
I get it, but I also, it's like, Max, just let the sport is a spectacle. I know, as a driver, I get it. It's a distraction, but the sport, Formula One, by its very nature, is a spectacle, right? That's the whole thing. It's the fastest cars in the world, the best drivers in the world, driving them to the absolute limit. It's a spectacle. So make a spectacle of the drivers too. So the driver introductions last year, I absolutely loved. I love American pomp and circumstance. I like that they don't just have the event. There's also events leading up and up to and after the events. Americans promo. Let's get as much out of this as we possibly can. Yeah. I enjoy that, Tim. I like that part.
Gets you excited. I mean,
yeah,
you know, they do it for the Super Bowl. I mean, look how big the Super Bowl is, right? They do it for, you know, World Series. They do it for the NBA Finals. I mean, the NHL Finals. I mean, let's talk about that, right? I mean, it wasn't blown up this big in America 2 years ago, right? But it was last year.
Yep.
And even though the Oilers were getting their asses kicked for the, and the draft as well. I mean, you should have seen like, there was a lot of people talking about the NHL draft last night. I was with a group of guys, and they had worked and attended the Sphere for the draft. And they were just like, it was one of the coolest things they've ever done.
Well, and what I've heard, it was amazing. Yeah. One of the things, though, Tim, I would say is that what I like about this sport is that in every area it goes to, it reflects the area it goes to. So, you know, people that are true, like European Formula One, this is the way it needs to be done, dyed-in-the-wool traditionalists, probably at first didn't like the way Brazilian fans were so loud and reactive when the races started happening in Brazil. Probably didn't like, you know, their move to Southeast Asia and how things were done there and the tracks there and the Middle East and whatever. And there are reasons for that. But what I love about Formula One is wherever you are, the sport is electric, and the scenery change reflects where you are. And I think that that's really cool. And this is, obviously I think Circuit of the Americas is the best track in the United States. And, and it's the Austin race is so great, but Vegas is its own show. And bring out the confetti, bring out the colors, and it's a night race. Like, there's something very America about it, and I'm all for it. I'm excited. Now, there is a lot of competition going into this weekend about these teams. Who do you think does well at a track like this? It's not a track we've had a ton of experience with. So who do you think going in are some of the best teams?
Well, I mean, like I said off the top, I mean, it's definitely got to be Ferrari. I think Ferrari's definitely got to be the favorite coming in. They're coming off like some fairly strong races recently. And I mean, Brazil, maybe not so much, but 2 races before that. And they were the fastest team. And, I think the same thing is going to happen here this weekend. It'll be interesting to see how the teams deal with the cold weather. It is cold here, Adam. Like, I think it's colder. It definitely feels colder than last year. The evenings are brutally cold. Like, I think last night, I think it was, I don't know, 8 degrees. Like, it was cold.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see who can kind of get to grips with that with tire warm up and stuff. But again, like, Ferrari's fighting for this Constructors Championship. And it is something that is well within their grasp and it's in their reach. And McLaren's got to fend them off. Are they going to be able to do that? Right. That's going to be one of the big questions. I mean, some people may not like the Constructors Championship. I personally love it because it's team versus team and you have to beat the other team. And that's what it comes down to. It's not necessarily, one driver against one driver, which is also great. Don't get me wrong. I love that as well, but I love the Constructors Championship and we've definitely got like a big one going on. And this is a big weekend for it as well. And it's a big weekend for Ferrari. I mean, they do have to outscore McLaren. They have to. They
do. And it's that's exciting stuff. Now, one of the things that we have, because we had to do the show a little bit early, we don't have all the driver quotes, but we do have an interview from Carlos Sainz. And Carlos Sainz talked a little bit and openly about another reason why I love this sport. People are open about what it's like to be a guy that's performing for Ferrari and performing well, to be kicked off that team because of Lewis Hamilton, and then to not be able to secure a job at any of the top teams. And no disrespect to Williams, but that's a team that could, was out of tubs earlier in the year. You know what I mean? Like where Logan Sargent can't race because we don't have enough cars. We don't have enough parts. He did say in the interview, like, I'm kind of surprised at some of the moves that some of these teams have made. And he said, it does make me more excited to compete with Williams. So if you're a Williams fan, I wouldn't take that as, oh, Carlos is upset about being there. But I think you can understand why he's perplexed by specifically Mercedes and Red Bull Mercedes going younger and Red Bull just not committing at all, right? Like, Red Bull's hung on to Perez despite them being a high-performance team, and they expect a lot from their drivers, and Perez is still there. Like, I can understand why he's a little upset by that.
Yeah, Mercedes as well, right?
Well, yeah, Antonelli. I mean, yeah.
You kind of look like nothing against Antonelli, Adam, but
no. I mean, what do you say to him if you're one of Carlos Sainz's closest confidants and this is happening? What do you think you say to him?
Oh, that'd be so hard.
Yeah.
Like, imagine having that conversation. Like, he's a Grand Prix winner. Like, he's won with Ferrari. He's been on Ferrari. Do you know how many drivers in the entire friggin' world would love to race for the Scuderia and win with them? You're in the history books for that team now. Like, it's massive. He won in a season. He won in a season where Verstappen dominated everything.
Yep.
Right? Everything. And so, if you're his manager, if you're, one of his closest confidants, like, what do you say? I mean, Mercedes probably only wanted him for one season.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a little unfair, only because of just how strong of a driver he is. Like,
and the results he's getting, like the recent very good results.
Because if you're not really respecting what Carlos is doing, then you can't really respect. Then if you're not respecting what Carlos Sainz is doing at Ferrari, then what are they thinking about Charles Leclerc? I mean, like, Leclerc is an incredible talent. Like, these are two really talented, really talented drivers, right? So it doesn't add up to me, Adam, and I really think that one of these teams has made a mistake. But I think for Carlos being able to still be in the show moving forward still opens himself up to opportunities a few years down the road to get back to those teams. Or who knows, Adam, maybe Williams really turns things around next season and maybe they're able to capture a podium here or there. And then who's to say what happens in 2026, right? I mean, are they going to be a championship contending team? No. I mean, they're not going to be that for quite a while. They have a lot to do behind the scenes. They have a lot of infrastructure that they need to upgrade. They have a lot of CapEx that they need to spend on that infrastructure.
Yep.
And so, yeah, like he'll definitely help Williams. Like, that's a huge get for them. That's a huge get.
Yeah, and it'll be great because he'll be one of the more motivated drivers on the grid, like starting 100%. Race 1 next year. Like, you'll have something to prove, and it feels rough because Carlos is always a guy that seems like he's been overlooked. It must be annoying at this point, right?
Oh, gotta be.
Like, so anyway, I'm excited to see what he does with the last few races here with Ferrari, and one of the most beloved guys on the track. Like, everybody likes Carlos, it seems like. Maybe Max and Carlos's dads didn't get along at Toro Rosso, but like, how do you hate Carlos Sainz? He's a great guy. I think fans will be rooting for him. And you know what I think he brings to Williams that they maybe haven't had is, like, he brings and no disrespect to Albon or any of the drivers that have raced there, but it's been a while since they've had a driver of that kind of resume race for them. And, I'm thinking back to, like, they used to be the team, right? And
Felipe Massa, maybe, Adam?
Like, yeah, and maybe? and he would have brought the big Brazilian contingent that he always had with him. But, like, Williams fans, if you run into them, most of them are significantly older than your average Formula One fan. It's because they've been watching since Williams was last good. And so this is going to bring a whole new generation of fans to, the W. And hopefully something magic happens next year, whether it's Sainz or Albon or both, to really grab them and make this a legitimate, brand that stays in Formula One and never gets changed. The one thing I'll say is that I was worried when Dorlton Capital bought the Williams name, because I thought, what if they switch it? Like, what if because do they have to keep it? Maybe they have to keep it for a few years, but what's to stop them from bringing in an engine manufacturer like an Audi and plastering their logo all over it? And for the history of the sport and the tradition of independent teams, which is obviously, it's now too expensive, I hope that Williams' name is cemented here in the next few years, so that way the next generation can grow and fall in love with the brand and the team and the drivers, whoever goes for them, so that they become that name again, like McLaren, those names that are like synonymous with Formula One.
Yeah, and I think James has done a great job of turning them around. I mean, they definitely were in those dark days there for a really long time. And just having him come in, steady the ship, really clean a lot of things up that were going on in the background, getting them working together more as a cohesive team and efficient. And yeah, if they're able to, or when they're able to, I should say, upgrade their factory more, get better technology in there, I mean, this team is going to be extremely strong. They will be. And they've been they have been a surprise the back half of this season, Franco Colapinto in particular. But again, like, the updates that they brought to the car, they seem to have worked. The ones that they brought to the car in Zandvoort, they've done really well. With that, they've really turned around that performance now. And that's an interesting thing for me, because if they were able to do this earlier in the season without all the crash damage, without having to like prep another tub, like get a third tub, which should have been ready to go for later in the season. I mean, who's to say where they could have been, right?
Yeah.
Because all of that really backloads your updates. Like your updates are now like an afterthought when you're having to deal with crash damage and new tubs and all that kind of stuff, and to get that stuff ready and built. And so, yeah, when I take a look at the season as a whole, and this is something obviously we'll cover more of when we do sort of a end of season sort of review for the teams. I really think that they could have done a lot more if they hadn't have started off on the back foot.
Absolutely. Now, Tim, switching gears to a fan event that I think everybody's going to love. There will be a first ever livery launch in London. Livery launch in London for Formula One fans at the O2, which is the biggest place. It's the and the tickets for this went on sale for between 58 and 113 pounds, so roughly $100 to $200 Canadian. And some people waited online for hours in advance of the ticket window opening. It sold out almost immediately, which speaks to the popularity of Formula One. It's just crazy right now. The fact that they're not just putting it out as a tweet, they're making this a gigantic event for 60, 70,000 people. And all the drivers will be there. All the teams will be there. Some resale on websites have tickets going for as much as £1,000, which are, $1,500 to $1,700 Canadian. And Formula One has warned people, listen, if you buy those, they may not be valid, because the conditions of sale is that the tickets bought through an unofficial resale platform are not valid for entry. So the idea was to prevent scalping. But the problem is that you can't prevent that. And so the people that are willing to pay the scalper prices are like, hey, then I'm going to buy these, or I bought these and now I can't use them. Is that what you're saying? And so it's sort of, as much as I think it's well-intentioned, Tim, it's a bit of a kick in the pants to people, because they obviously want to go. And for a lot of people who work normal jobs or have kids or live in different parts of the world, being able to log on at a specific time and wait for several hours for tickets that might open up so you can jump in and grab a couple, it's just not something we can do, right? Like, you can't, who's got time for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited for the event. I hope they let people in, is my point.
It's tough for like fans. Mm-hmm. That's tough on like your hardcores that want to get closer to the sport, because this is an opportunity to have that moment. Mm-hmm. Because like livery unveils aren't really open to the public, Adam. Like when was the last time we actually really had a massive livery launch that was open for the public? I think Ferrari unveiled their car at their test track, but I think that was just for like Ferrari employees, partners of the team, all that kind of stuff. Like it wasn't like, I don't think it was like fans who were able to like get in there.
Right.
And so I think like this is one of those moments where it's like really special to bring your fans closer to your sport for a livery unveil. I don't know how like resellers and all that kind of stuff works. I really don't. I know like you go on a Ticketmaster and you buy a ticket for something and away you go, right? Yeah. But like sometimes you can't get a ticket to something, so you go on to the other reseller sites and you pick up tickets there. I mean, normally when I do that for like concerts and stuff, it's not that the ticket is like overpriced. It's mostly like it's a couple bucks more, and I'm willing to pay that because I'm a huge fan of XYZ band. But for this, and the things that I've heard, like it's like, how can you justify taking a ticket that is like $100 and something and then
jacking up the price? Yeah,
through the freaking roof.
It's man. Like Taylor Swift, man.
How can you do that? Like, and so, I mean, we're getting off topic, but it's like, how do you control that?
I don't know.
Like, how are you gonna control that? And so, anyways, regardless, I hope, I hope the fans, who really, really, really want to be there, get to see this. It's going to be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping to be there. hopefully, fingers crossed. But it's great. I like the Formula One's doing it. I think it shows a lot more forward thought where, things like the Super Bowl, you're kicking off the Super Bowl, right, Adam? And you have a massive like media and events day. And you open that up to your reporters. You've got like when you do the NBA All-Star, like you have fans that can pay to go and watch the dunk competition. You can watch them practice. You can watch them players do all of these other little things. And this is kind of similar to that. And I think on the media side, it could open this up for people like, like us to, have some time with XYZ team personnel and, bank the content and we, use it later kind of thing. And that's not something that we've been able to ever do. And that's what they do in other sports, like NBA Media Day. Like they do stuff straight off the hop, but they also take the content that they need and they bank it for later. And so it's really like every major North American sport does that.
Right.
And so I like that. I like the Formula One's taking a shot at it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Again, it goes back to American pomp and circumstance. They're able to take something that in the past, it's like, oh, here's a couple pictures of the new car and turn it into a 70,000 person ticketed event with, fireworks. I think that's so America, even though it's going to be in England. That's an American company thing.
But like for like us, Adam, like our podcast, it's Canadian, North American, right? Like,
yep.
I mean, obviously we have listeners from around the globe. And we don't necessarily know how they feel about American sports and how America and Canada kind of do their sports, right? We don't know that. But I think for someone like, I don't know, I can't speak for you, Adam, but someone for like myself who lives here, I like it because it gets me ready, builds me up, gets me excited for the season. It gets me excited for, getting to watch basketball or getting to watch football. And that's what I'm here for, right? That's what I love about sports. And so I like that F1 is doing something like this to just sort of get everybody sort of amped up and ready. And I think that's just smart. And let's see where it goes. It could be something that works out really well for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, other interesting things around the Formula One world, Damon Hill has left his spot of 14 years at Sky Sports. He started when he was 13 years. He started when he was 51. He's now 64, right around retirement age.
Adam?
It is weird.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know why he did that, though. It's weird.
Well, so this is the thing, Tim, and these might be just crazy rumors, but there were rumors that next could be Crofty and Brundle. And I hope that's not the case. I hope that's not what's going on here. Damon Hill, I thought, always brought a very balanced perspective to Sky Sports F1. And there is people like, oh, well, there's British bias. I mean, it's a British network, man. I don't know what you want me to say. Like, yeah, of course there's British bias. But I think they do a really fair job of calling things out. And I know they've gotten in trouble. I know Max Verstappen's not been happy with them from time to time, and other drivers have said the same thing. But that happens between media and athletes networks and teams and stuff. That's every sport. Damon Hill, though, specifically, I just want to talk. I don't know much more than it seems like a suspicious exit, but he's certainly not deeming it that way. What do you think Damon Hill brought to those broadcasts that will be hard to replicate?
His knowledge on competition, like competing against championship winning drivers. I mean, he went toe to toe with Michael Schumacher. Like, what I mean? Like, there's not really much more of a bigger name. Yeah, and there's not much more of a bigger name than sort of like that. I mean, it's pretty big on your resume, and like winning a championship as well. I think that for me is important because so much experience there. Having gone through it and done it, did it his way. Right? Like, I mean, we all have to do things our own way, but he did it his way. And like, I think that knowledge is extremely important on your broadcast when you are trying to communicate something to the fans. And you're trying to give them an understanding what it's like sort of behind the visor. There is, Martin Brundle's great at what he does. He is. there are a lot of guys and girls who are on that broadcast who do an incredible job. I think Damon, had his way of going about doing things on the broadcast that some parts of me, I was kind of like, some parts of me were kind of like, I get that. Some parts of me were kind of like, that's a really good point. He kind of like nailed all three of those things for me. And I always, watch folks who are on TV just like you do, Adam, and kind of see like, where they've done something really good, and you can see it and it.
Yep.
And doing live television, the way that they're doing it is really difficult. I can't really express to you how hard it is to react to these things in live time and maintain that level of professionalism, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's very hard. And the way that Sky does it, like, they're coming right out of the race, they're reacting to what they saw, they're going to the media pen, where their journalists are doing an incredible job. They're getting the questions from the drivers, they're coming back, they're hearing it, they're reacting to all of it. And it's just that whole nature of that show that just works so well. And you have to really be on your game to swim in those waters. And, I thought, yeah, I'm gonna miss watching Damon. Like, I don't know him. I don't know Damon Hill, but like I did enjoy watching him. I really did.
Yeah. And
what did you think? What do you think?
Well, God, like we produce content for a living, right? So I try to look at what each announcer, what point of view are they bringing? What's Danica bringing? What's Jensen bringing? What's Naomi Schiff bringing? What's Damon bringing? And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a Danica fan for a multitude of reasons. I think that there are, if you want someone with experience in that lane, I think there are far better choices than her. But they seem to be glued to her. I think Jensen's really good. I think Naomi Schiff is awesome. And I thought Damon, Formula One is a sport that has gotten a lot younger very quickly. And I'm hoping what management isn't doing is going, let's get rid of the old guy. Because that old guy won a Formula One championship. And he won it before or as the golden era of one driver was ending and another's was starting. Senna had just passed away a few years before. Schumacher had won, but was really on the rise. And we'd see that in the early 2000s with Ferrari. And at that point, Villeneuve was, Williams was really a great team as well. And that was the start of the next golden era of Formula One is what I would say. And so to lose a guy who could speak to that audience, I grew up watching Damon Hill, as did you, Tim, as a part of the driver lineups that we would have seen. And though he wasn't like the standout electric personality that Michael Schumacher was, he is a guy who was in that era and can speak to that. And I think every broadcast needs a balance of that. Jensen can talk about what things were like in the 2010s. Damon could talk about things from the 90s and 2000s. I think you need guys from the 80s. I think Brundle's that guy, right? You need a little bit of that to bring it in because you do need to measure where the sport was and where it's gone to. And then you need the young injection of talent like you have with the Naomi Schiff, where somebody who comes in, and I hope Daniel Ricciardo jumps into that lane eventually too, where you've got people that are young and fresh and vibrant who are like today's thing. Because that juxtaposition between old and young can be very effective on the air because you're going to have disagreements about how things were in my day versus, well, whatever, old man. That kind of stuff really works on the air. And I thought Sky had a really great way of presenting those. I wish that they would, when they have panels, I wish they'd disagree a little bit more. I wish they'd not be afraid to have a agreeable disagreement on camera. That's where I think they're really lacking. And I thought Damon would be a guy who'd be perfect for that. But I have to say, here's the other thing, and we forget this. We're speculating on why he could have gone. It's not easy to be on the road 10, 11 months a year. Like, that's what you're looking at, right? If you're a Formula One broadcaster, Tim, and if you're going to every race, when do you see your family?
Exactly.
And you're in your mid-60s,
it's really difficult.
multi-millionaire. I don't know. Might be fun to just go home and play with your toys. So there's that part too. But as a fan, I really enjoyed Damon. I thought he brought some really good points to it, and there is that credibility with a Formula One champion that you just can't get anywhere else, right?
Yeah, agreed.
So
yeah, no, well said. I think that's really well said, Adam. I mean, it could have been a multiple world champion.
Should have been
1994 Adelaide. Okay, we're leaving it there, and we're moving on.
Now, something I wanted to ask you about, because I thought this would be kind of neat, and I think it's long overdue. But Tim, let's talk about heat. Let's talk about, why are we driving Vegas at night, Tim? Why are we driving at night? Why isn't it a daytime Vegas race?
Why not? Why not?
Well, we're driving Vegas at night because it's boiling hot in the day, right? Because it's
actually sizzling. You know what? It's really it's not
not so bad.
It's not that bad here. Like
That's good.
It's cold here. Like it was. So I came from,
because it's desert, right?
Vancouver. Yeah. I came from. So I was up in Vancouver for the Grey Cup, and I was, thanks to the BC Lions, by the way. Then I flew down to Vegas on Monday, and Vancouver was friggin' cold, like really, really, really cold. Like where it was like, it's gonna snow cold. And I came to here, and I was like, it's even colder. Like, is it gonna snow here? That's where my thoughts went to. And during the day, if you get out into the sunshine for a little bit, it's okay. But like, I'm still wearing a sweater and a jacket, pants, all that stuff here during the day. It's extremely cold. And at night it's even colder. I'll be interested to see if that changes as the weekend sort of progresses here. It's supposed to, but we'll see. But yeah, Adam, I mean, like, you couldn't do this race in July, like in this, during the day, like,
listen, so I may have messed up the intro to that. I should ask you about Singapore. And the reason I say that is the FIA have approved for the very first time driver cooling kits in
Adam,
2025.
You should just brought up Qatar last year.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's really freaking hot driving one of those cars. And Tim, you've driven it in Europe, you've done it in Canada. How hot is it on a normal day?
Hot.
Boiling freaking hot. Yeah.
It's super hot. Like, you've got Nomex fireproof underwear on. You've got a Nomex fireproof racing suit on. You have your Nomex fireproof balaclava. On top of it, you have your helmet that's also like holding in all that heat in your head. And you're also sitting on a V6 twin turbo and a battery, and the amount of heat that's coming off of those things. And then you got the heat from the track, like the asphalt that radiates through you as well. So you're absolutely fried inside of these cars. And you're also like under an immense amount of stress, especially physical. You're under a ton of physical stress. And having a cool suit is definitely going to help during like the Qatars, right? Like, I think,
yeah, you're talking about specifically Qatar 2023 or 2023, right? Like that was crazy.
I don't know how, like, we didn't, like, something really bad didn't happen. Like, it was, I mean, the stories that, drivers and folks have told me after that race is just, it's like horrifying. It's just, they needed this. So it's good. It's good that it's getting pushed through. I like it.
So the proposals, the proposals came about because of that race, Tim. And according to motorsport.com, initial proposals involved fitting a simplified air conditioning system into the cars. But while exact technical details are yet to emerge, motorsport.com understands the solution now agreed to between the FIA and F1 teams and all involved involves a simplified system that no longer requires an AC unit, which will keep the cars lighter. The system will be mandated by the FIA in only extreme heat conditions, with the minimum weight of cars increased correspondingly when applicable. So obviously, if you're going to add a pound with this AC system, then everybody can go up a pound. Or everybody has to go up a pound, right? It's a minimum weight requirement. So I think, we're very, very lucky we got out of that race without anything happening, and a few other ones too. And so with this, it just sort of seems to take the edge off. Like, it's not like they're not going to be hot or sweating. It just means that they're not going to be suffering heat exhaustion symptoms maybe as badly, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, hopefully you take the cockpit temperature from like whatever 48, down to 40. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we're not. That's not still like you're still cooking in there. It doesn't matter. So, I like that they are taking that initiative. I think it's smart. It's great that they listen to the drivers. And I think, it's probably not going to have to be used, a fair amount. There may be some races where they may have to use them within the season. But again, right, Adam, I mean, it's just all about making sure that like the health of the driver is, paramount during races like that. Because
pretty important stuff.
Some of the guys, I was talking to some of the team officials, reporters who were at that race last year, and they were even like telling me like it was boiling hot just for them, and they weren't even in the car. So
yeah, it's just that way. Well, Tim, listen, I think it seems like Formula One in a lot of ways is coming to its senses. We also had the announcement this week that the schedule, as it continues to be quote unquote rationalized, will move the Canadian Grand Prix into May, and it's specifically we call it the May 2-4 long weekend, but it's a Victoria Day long weekend in Canada. And what's hilarious about that is it's a long weekend, and it's technically the early kickoff to summer, but it also can involve snow, especially in a place like you right, especially in a place like Montreal where weather's unpredictable. I think the Canadian GP just went from a semi-warm weather race to whatever the hell nature decides to be this year, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah, well, that's going to be for 2026. Because we've already got June locked in for 2025. Yeah, you know what? I'd be curious to see what this next year, what May is like in Montreal. Next season, and then we'll get a better idea for what to expect. Like, is it going to be freezing cold? I mean, I think also it does push the building of everything back as well, Adam. Like, you have to take that in consideration where, workers may not have had to work in, snowy conditions, etc. Maybe by pushing that back, they may have to. So I'll be fascinated to see how they work all that out. I do understand, obviously Formula One's really trying to get their carbon footprint under control. They've done a really good job of it so far, and then trying to have more races within certain parts of the world at certain times.
Yep.
The calendar is getting there, and that's kind of nice to see. I think that, kind of started that way this year. When we had like Australia, we had Japan, we had China, kind of like all sort of packaged together, which was the smart thing to do. And
it makes sense to do legs, right? Like a tour, like a rock band.
I think so. Yeah, I think, and I agree with that. And I think it also helps with freight if you think about it too. Yeah. So if they're going to come over here in May for Miami, right? So you're going to do Miami, and then let's just say hypothetically you have a week off, maybe two, and then you're going to go to Canada. So you're going to freight the stuff that you've already brought over here up to Canada. You're going to do Canada, but then you can keep the freight here. And you can keep that freight here, and you can then send it down to what's going to be your next race in North America, which would be Texas. So then you would freight everything to Texas. From Texas, you'd freight it to Mexico. And then from Mexico, you'd freight it to Las Vegas. Sort of keeping everything on this side without having to send it all the way back over to Europe and then go back and forth. Now, what I mean by the freight aspects, I mean like the hospitality stuff, the garage components. What does the garages, look like? All that kind of stuff. And usually teams have, Adam, sort of maybe two, maybe three aspects of that. And it kind of seems like they've got like their North American sort of freight, and then they've got their European, and then they've kind of got everything sort of else, right? And so I think that is going to help with the logistics of all of it as well. I'm curious to see how it turns out. I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, I don't know if it can't be any colder than here. I don't think, right, Adam? Like,
I don't
Montreal
think so.
in May. Like, I mean, it was 5 degrees here last night, man.
Oh my god! Well, that's the desert for you too, right? When there's no moisture in the air, the temperatures drop as soon as the sun goes away, right? So that's the desert. That's Calgary was like that.
So, yeah, exactly. So I'm wondering what that's going to be like in May. Well, because it can't be any colder than that, I don't think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Let's see what happens. I'm game. I'm game to see what it looks like.
What's your day like tomorrow? Let's talk about tomorrow.
Well, I mean, today on the Wednesday, so we got media day. So we've got some sit-down interviews with a couple drivers, which is going to be great. People can see all that stuff on TSN. And Thursday, we've got our free practice. Then we've got some team principal interviews that I'm doing. Then we've got a free practice 2. And then hopefully, Adam, like with the way that they've scheduled it here, so they've kind of moved things back a couple hours, which is nice. Mm-hmm. I would want it to be moved back even more, simply because, I mean, last year we weren't getting out of here until we weren't getting out of the track until 3:34 in the morning.
Yeah.
Now we're probably going to be getting out around 1 in the morning.
Okay.
And it gets dark here around 4. So it's, I think you can move it back even more. But I do get it. You want to make sure that, the European broadcast isn't doing a broadcast at 4 in the morning European time or 3 in the morning European time. It's because everyone comes from Europe to come here for this one, are always kind of saying that, it's going to be an early morning, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, listen, you don't know what it's like when, F1 goes to Japan or Australia, and I'm up at my day starts at 9 p.m. and it goes until 6 a.m.
Yeah. And it's just for a weekend. It's not like you have time to stay in that schedule.
But Adam, it's not one weekend.
No. It's 3, 4.
Australia, Japan, China, those,
yeah. But what I mean is your regular job, just keeps going, right? I got to do TSN at a normal time, right? For people.
Yeah.
So,
and you and I got to do this.
Yep.
So it's
oh man. Well,
I like that it's a night race. So I really do. And yeah, man, I really think it's going to be a great race this weekend for sure.
No doubt. Tim, I'm looking forward to, sorry.
Before we go, I wanted to say, did you see Logan Sargent with Meyer Shank yesterday?
I did. So Logan, what's the story there?
Okay. Yeah, no, he did really well. He was one of the faster drivers there. I mean, again, he's also competing against rookies and everything at the same time, other drivers who've never really been in an Indy car either. But there are some who have, and yeah, he did really good, man. He's one of the fastest drivers out there. So, yeah, good on him. I don't know what his plans are. He doesn't have a ride yet for next season. Meyer Shank their seats are kind of spoken for. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he kind of shakes out. But I think for Mike Shank and those guys, it gives them an understanding of what Logan can do. So if they need him for something, if they need to parachute him in at some point, they know that he's going to be able to do the job. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty impressive. He did a really great job.
Good for him, because I think the narrative around Logan Sargent needs to change a little bit. It's just, he's not a bad driver. Okay. He got into Formula One. So Tim, I'm looking forward to chatting with you on Monday. I can't wait to hear all the Vegas stories because they're always good. And we will be back then. So be on the lookout for Nailing the Apex and follow Tim on Blue Sky and Twitter.
Oh yeah.
Twitter. Yeah. Because Tim is on both now. And follow him around for updates and stuff this weekend. Tim is our boots on the ground always. Tim, looking forward to this, man.
Thanks, buddy.